Welcome back to the Wingspan podcast, episode 23. I'm Doug Barak, joined by my co-host Chris Mulholland of Nets Daily and our special guest. Our guest is the Brooklyn Nets Gaming Crew general manager and coach. He's also the co-founder of the My Player Basketball Association and host of the OG 2 Cents podcast.
We welcome Ivan Curtis, aka OG King Kurt, to the pod. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join Doug and I. What's going on, man?
Hey, there's been a lot going on, but I'm glad that our season has started, and I was impressed with the guys on Friday night, and we're building on it today and getting ready for tomorrow.
Sounds Perfect. Good. Well, thanks again for coming on.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. And then let's kick it off by mostly saying what you've been up to since COVID-19 kind of put the sports world at halt, and mostly what you've been up to.
You know, it's been an interesting time for myself because, of course, we were getting ready. For me, I was actually getting ready to do a live 2K event, a broadcasting opportunity for me during the preseason. And it was that same week that everything pretty much came to a halt. And on top of that, we had to hurry up and move all our PCs and everything from the training facility into the apartments. And it changed drastically. We didn't really know what we were going to do as far as league-wise, but we still were practicing remote as usual. And in the process, I just started collabing. I had some collaborations with different people, and so I've been doing esports shows weekly. Still, obviously, doing my podcast, but we practice, and of course, we came into some bumps in the road in our roster and different things like that. But once we got back on track, we pretty much been practicing, geared up for our first game, and now we're just looking to go forward.
Most definitely. And then obviously, like we discussed, we're going to hop onto your podcast and talk a little about it later on in the episode. But one thing I got to ask you too is, was it a struggle kind of working with your team remotely during that time?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I pride myself on making direct impact. I'm ever since I became the general manager and coach for SGC, I like the face-to-face interaction. I mean, of course, texting and everything is fine, but one thing I always look forward to was seeing my guys every day and being able to interact and joke and physically game plan and talk about what it is that we're trying to do. And I think that's the best way to bond as a unit. So it made it tough with everybody basically being in isolation and not being able to see each other, and me having to watch even our practices remote. It was a struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I completely understand it. So what kind of tactics have you guys been using to kind of, since there's occasional roster change and stuff like that, to get to know each other better, to practice, like those kind of things?
Well, now it's pretty much been laxed on our end, where we are back at our training facility, and so it's kind of back to somewhat normality. We have obviously different time periods where we used to be able to come in, anytime we felt like it. Now it's we pretty much have standard times where we come in and practice for a certain amount of hours, and then basically we're out. And big shout out to BSE Global for providing our own personal transportation, so we don't have to be in different vehicles every day and different things like that. So it's still a lot of strict guidelines that we're following, but it's been nothing but first class from our organization to make sure that we're still able to practice and perform appropriately on game nights.
That's amazing to hear. I really love that, the kind of measures that they're taking to make sure that everyone from all parts of their league are, staying safe and, as best as possible. So
yeah.
So we'll jump back to Nets Gaming Crew later in the pod, but just wanted to jump back even further to earlier. So, when did you realize that you wanted a career in esports, and what video games did you grow up playing? And were you a console or computer gamer, or both?
Okay. Um, it's I started, because I'm an older guy, so I'm 41. I started playing obviously in the 80s. Atari, Atari 2600. I pretty much been with the whole evolution of gaming, all the way even from some floppy disk games and different things like that. So I know it's funny because a lot of people look at me and I don't always, I think, look my age, so people are not always aware of that. But I started with Atari. I always loved the sports games. Obviously, back then the graphics were so terrible. Now we didn't think that then because that's all we had. But it pretty much is just stick figures and everything. But I still love the basketball games, and more or less like the Pac-Mans, the Asteroids, and different things like that. It's crazy for me because when I first started playing games, I played everything. Like it didn't matter if it was fighting games, shooting games, like I said, Pac-Man, any type of game, you name it. But when 2K, the merge of NBA Live, it basically started it for me. Of course, with a lot of people, I may be speaking foreign language right now because you had the Lakers versus Celtics series, you had the Lakers versus Bulls, those different series from EA Sports that started pretty much everything. And then Live showed up, and that just took my heart because I played the Maddens, I played the Bill Walsh college footballs and everything like that, even Tecmo Bowl and everything. But once Live came on the scene, that I pretty much was stuck with it. And then Live pretty much transferred over into 2K, and the rest was history. I mean, I never really PC games. I wasn't that advanced in gaming to cross over into the PC world, than the standard solitary and different things like that.
I feel that.
That's already on the PCs. But other than that, I was just pure console. And like I said, I played multiple games coming up, and then once I got older, Live pretty much it took over, and then 2K just basically captured my heart. And then once I started playing 2K, I didn't play any other game. 2K, when it first came out, for me when I was playing, it was on Dreamcast. That's when I started playing it. And then as it moved on later, of course, I got an Xbox 360 and then Xbox One and so forth. But that's pretty much how I got into gaming. Now, as far as the career, I wouldn't say it was something that I set out to do. I had a strong passion for video games, and I just took an opportunity from just loving playing the game. And I think as whenever we get into it, is just talking about the NPBA, that pretty much was my intro to esports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can really relate with growing up with video games. I played on PC, but back then when I grew up on PC games, it was floppy disk games. I and backyard baseball and all that. But making it more relevant to what we're talking about, so I didn't really grow up watching basketball and sports to like a big extent. So when I decided to finally start watching basketball, was the time when Nets were moving to Brooklyn, and I was mostly on my PC at the time, when I was still a big PC gamer. And the first game I picked up was actually the wrong version of NBA 2K. So it was the year before the Nets came to Brooklyn. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to buy the other 2K. So I bought 2Ks. I think it was 2K13. I'm always bad with the math of this. 2K12? No, 2K12, I think, was the first year for Brooklyn. And I taught myself basketball by playing that game. Like, that's how impactful, video games were for me. And you would never be able to tell, like, the way I talk about the game and stuff, that I learned a lot of it from, playing the video game. So it was huge for me. And one of the games I still play the most is 2K. Regardless of quality, I will still be on 2K every year. I'll buy it, not as crazy as the iPhone and stuff like that, or Call of Duty, but I buy it quite religiously. So I find video games just such an educational experience, and they have so many benefits to it. So hopefully other people can take it like that as well. But yeah, I did PC, did Xbox, did Nintendo, and it was a huge part of my life. And I think video games should always, be a major part of the culture.
No, I definitely agree. It's when I was a kid, we played it in our free time. Most of the time, we were outside playing the game physically. But I do agree that, especially the way the games have evolved, you can definitely learn a lot from just simply playing the game.
And then, Ivan, I got to ask you as well, man, especially with your knowledge. And like you said before, you've been around gaming for some time. What do you, at least in my opinion, being a video game gamer as well, why do you think the NBA 2K series as of late kind of overpassed other franchises like Madden, like you've discussed before, or kind of are more popular in that video game culture?
I think largely because of the actual NBA and this emergence of stars and where young fans. I think even piggybacking off what was just mentioned about kids and gamers learning about the game through playing it. A lot of kids can watch. They can watch it on TV and then they can go play it on the game and it resonates. And then you have the one thing I like about sporting games, but 2K in general, is that you can really love to play basketball. You may not be physically good at it, but you can be good at the game and still get equally recognition amongst your peers if you're exceptionally good, and especially when you grow up playing it and then you create an opportunity for you to play in the 2K league and different things like that. So you still have your own separate lane through the same passion of loving the game, but you create a lane for yourself to get a certain amount of notoriety and different things like that. So and that just shows the growth and how far everything has came. Because I would have never thought as a kid that I would be sitting here actually the general manager of an NBA 2K League team.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Like, I love to hear it. I love to see it. So that makes it perfect transition to the next question. So about talking about your journey and how you became such a prominent figure in the NBA 2K community.
Well, yes, it started 2014-15. That was basically the merge of the My Player mode. The one thing that I always speak on when I speak about 2K is so many modes to the game. And our community is big, but it's always separated by the modes. Of course, you have the My Team, the 1v1, the Park, and everything like that. But at that time in 2014, 2015, we had the Jordan Rec Center. And basically, you can create your own avatar to your likeness, different positions, however you wanted to create them. And people were joining teams and going into the rec center and competing against each other. Well, at the time, I didn't really know people, but I always was just open and friendly to playing with any and everybody. And I started talking to people, and they were telling me about leagues that had been created that people were actually competing in. And so I dug a little deeper. I got on some gaming forums and different things like that. I actually found one at the time. It was the ABL, the American Basketball League, was one of the first leagues that I started to play in. And slowly but surely, I got heavily involved and I started working and helped operate the league. And through that, I got to know a lot of people. People were knowing me. But then there was a few bigger leagues, the SBA specifically. And I'm going to speak on this guy later when we get into the topic. But Dietrich Glover was the creator of this league, and basically he had started it more or less from the 1v1 mode. But when they created the Jordan Rec Center, he started to operate the same way. And through that, playing in that league, that's where I met my best friend to date, Tawan Fairley, known as LT in the community. He's the general manager and coach for Mavs GG. And I started, he was actually playing the same role in the SBA as I was in the ABL. And eventually we started playing together. And one day he just said, Kurt, I think I can run a league. And I think it can be better than any league that's out. And I said, you sure? He was like, yeah. I said, what are you going to call it? And he said, the MPBA. And I said, what does that stand for? And he said, My Player Basketball Association. And I said, that sounds good to me. I said, if you want to do it, I said, I'll do it with you. Because at this point, basically, through playing all the competition in the community, the one thing about the ABL is that it kept stats and graphics and different things like that to keep it more interesting. And the SBA was it was the Structured Basketball Association. So it basically had a lot of rules that kept it regulation, where it just wasn't you going out and doing any and everything. So we basically took the best of both worlds and put them together and created the MPBA. And we started in a Facebook group chat, which was that's all we knew at the time. We didn't even know that it was another world in Twitter until Lawrence West, who's the GM and coach for Hornets Venom GT at the 2K League, he came along and he pretty much helped us market the league. And he would find out any and every avenue that we needed to attack. And he came to us one day and said, we need to get on Twitter. Now, at the time, we're in Facebook, and we have like 8,000 to 9,000 people in this chat. And so when we went to Twitter, it was a whole new world. We didn't know it. I didn't know anything about Twitter, neither did LT, because we wasn't really like public. We were, titled as public figures, but we never was really on social media that much. And so when we went to Twitter, we kind of branched out, and that's when we just really took off. And we started in 2015. By the following year, we were basically the number one league in Pro-Am. And every player that was anybody that was good at that mode basically was playing in our tournaments and league. And it catapulted from there and transferred over in the NBA 2K League in 2017, where basically 80% of the players that were drafted had all at one point in time played in our tournament or league. And, it was just a great feeling. Me and LT later during that time, we joined Bucks GG as draft analysts and helped them in their first season and building their team. And it moved on forward after that, which landed myself in Brooklyn, landed LT and Matt and Dallas with Mavs GG, and this year Wes joined Hornets Venom GT. So we all pretty much came from the same crop, and now we have moved on to I guess what they say, bigger and better things.
Oh no, for sure. I mean, I can't even imagine, managing that many people. Like, what were some of the emotions seeing your success rise so quickly and to such, amazing numbers?
The funny thing about it is that, how sometimes when you've been working on something for so long and then you finally see the success of it, to some people it kind of looks like overnight. But like this has been like every day of your life for the last 4 to 5 years. And that's the crazy part about it is, we have it's just so many memories, so many stories, just us doing something out of the basic, just out of the love of the game. Like we didn't see anything in the future. We didn't have an idea. The only thing for us, it was just about creating the best league that we could create that was fun, competitive, and that, people actually, instead of just going around saying they their best or they had the best Pro-Am team, they literally had to prove it. And I think being able to create a platform that transitioned over is just like, it's a feeling I can't even describe. And one organization that I do want to mention in this process, because they started around the same time we did, they didn't always achieve the same amount of notoriety in the beginning, but the WR Pro-Am League, which is now pretty much the amateur Pro-Am League and tournament scene, they pretty much took over for us, and now we pretty much partner when we do events and different things like that. But they are now the premier league and tournament platform, and they've done a great job in basically maintaining it and having a place for the amateurs to play while they strive to make the NBA 2K league.
That's amazing. I wish I was that good.
That is amazing. That is amazing. But no, Ivan, I got to ask you too, man. Give me the origin of the nickname OG King Kerr and the Godfather of 2K. How did that all start? Because that's some high praise.
I mean, it is. I mean, I actually I still get chills from like when I hear it or even think about it, because for me, like, it was when I first started playing 2K. And now, mind you, I had been playing from Dreamcast, but then by the time I got to Xbox 360 is where I had to create a gamer tag. And my first original gamer tag was Big Kurt 937. Like, I'm from Dayton, Ohio, area code 937, and that's all I knew. And I was only playing 1v1 until the actual My Player mode came out. And basically, a friend of mine that I worked with, he is the one who actually taught me how to play online and compete and everything. So, big shout out to him. His name is Otha. He's from Dayton, Ohio. We still talk here and there. I mean, because he literally helped me even get to where I'm at, because I didn't know anything about, like we was mentioning earlier about Ethernet and Wi-Fi, and like, I knew nothing about Xbox Live. I didn't know anything. He taught me everything from the ground up. So I owe a lot to him, and I always pay homage to him every time I see him and talk to him. But I was Big Kurt 937. I joined it and started playing with LT on his Pro-Am team, which was NTOF, Never Think of Failure. And at that time, everybody on the team had King in their name. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to be on the team, I'll be uniform with the team. And so I changed it to OG, because LT used to always call me Old Geezer.
That's not what I was expecting the G was for.
It's not what I, but that's how that kind of
playful,
played a
playful
part
camaraderie.
Yeah. But so I was like, okay, he called me OG. A lot of people call me old head and different things like that. So I took the OG, I added the King, and then Kurt was what my mom used to call me. The first 4 letters of my last name. And I put it all together in OG King Kurt. But I always took the OG as the original gamer, because I've been playing the games longer than most of the kids that I was playing with or against. So, and once people recognize that, because the thing about it, once I start, like, people would come in the party and I get to talk, and it was like, man, your voice deep. You sound like somebody's dad. And I was like, I am somebody. I am, somebody's dad. And but I think, as far as the Godfather part of it, I've always had a positive outlook on the 2K community and helping people and promoting players. That was one of the things that we did heavy in our league, is that we always made sure that we promoted everybody. We promoted teams, players. We never made it about us. And I was always willing to help any and everybody. And once even I started gaining more recognition, I still was always willing to bring people up right along with me. And that's one thing that I just always took pride in, just being that older fatherly figure that just wanted to make it a great place for people to play.
I love that. I also love that it's old gamer. Like, that's man, I love that.
And then one thing I got to bring up as well. I say this on every podcast. I know a lot of listeners know, but I'm very high on mentors, right? So who are like you mentioned before, some of your mentors back at Dayton and stuff, but who are some of your mentors that you haven't really mentioned yet, or mentors that really made an impact to where you are today?
Well, I mean, of course, I'd have to start at home. I mean, with my mom and dad, of course. who's no longer here with me physically, but they pretty much set the OG that everybody knows, that's laid back and pretty much more mental and diabolical with my strategic approaches and different things like that. It definitely comes from my mom and dad. They were great, giving, loving, caring people that I hardly ever saw get mad or complain or anything. Like, they just taught me how to be, how to persevere and just go after whatever you want. So definitely my mom and dad, but also my high school basketball coach, Thomas Applegate, who is no longer here as well, but he was very instrumental in just my teenage years, because my dad, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when I was 15. So, that's a critical point at most kids' lives, especially boys at teenager going into high school and different things like that. So my coaches, they played a significant role. And Thomas Applegate, one of the kindest men I ever met in my life, where it was just more than just a game. I played basketball all 4 years, and then I went off to the military. But those three people played a big role in my life coming up as a kid. And as I matured, obviously I crossed paths with a lot of different people. But like I said, my mom and dad and my high school coach, they definitely played a big role in my life.
That's really good to hear. That's really good to hear. And then now let's switch some gears a little bit and let's talk about Nets GC. So, what have been some of your memorable moments thus far in the kind of the 2 seasons that you've been there?
Well, just to rewind a little bit going into that, is that right at when I signed with Nets GC, my mom never really got to see it all come to life. Like, when I was going back and forth to New York and different things like that, she was supportive. She was happy for me and everything like that. But she never got to see us play or do anything. She passed away right before everything happened.
Oh, wow.
So the memorable moment for me was like our first game. It was like, I watched the first season, thinking if I would ever be a part of it. I wasn't like gun ho about it. I've always been a believer that if something is for you, it's for you. And so that's the approach I took. So when it happened, the evening of that first game, we was playing Knicks Gaming. It was the first game of the tip-off for us, and we were playing against Knicks Gaming. And obviously, we're both teams in the same city. And I was excited, but I was so emotional because I just wish my mom had got to see it. Like, had got to see all the work. Because her thing was like, boy, you were always on that game. Like, you were always, like, not complaining, but, like, she knew that's what I love to do. And I used to tell her, like, Mom, well, trouble will only find me at home on the game. So you don't have to worry about anything, because I'm not out anywhere or doing it. I'm going to work. I come home and I'm on the game.
Yeah, that's a really touching sentiment. I totally understand.
So yeah, that's far as from that point. But like, it's just like, for me, interacting with the players and watching them grow, not only as players but just as people. Because, mind you, some of these guys are a little older than some of my kids, or are younger. So it's just that day-to-day interaction and being able to learn more about them beyond just playing the game. And then for a lot of them, I've watched for years play the game, and they know who I am. So it's kind of like, when they meet me, they're like, "Man, Kurt, you really are who I thought, like, who you have been all this time." Like, I mean, and so it's just like that initial interaction with them, but watching them grow and learning different things. And, of course, it's highs and lows. I mean, winning, of course, brings the highs, and then, losing here and there, unfortunately, it's an emotional roller coaster that I welcome each and every year.
That's good, man. And like, first off, that was a really touching story, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I know the listeners that are gonna listen to this when it does come out, are gonna really have an attachment to that. And I'm very big, and at least from when I met you the first draft night, right, going all the way back to the Nets GC's first season, right? You're one of those guys which I appreciate because you keep it real, right? You're one of those guys that always talk about what you believe and what you think, right? And I've noticed that, and think about it, we've only had maybe a couple talks here and there, interview wise and stuff like that. But you're always one of those guys that really keep it real. And that's what a lot of people take away when they hear of you, or even when they talk about you, whether it's what we'll dive into later on with your 2 cents, or it's just what you the work you produce or the kind of coaching style you coach with. I've noticed that. So I just wanted to mention that first.
Appreciate it.
And then now let's just dive a little more deeper into Nets GC. Let's talk back to the logo reveal. What were your first thoughts? I remember seeing when it came out, the whole the video with the Brooklyn Bridge and everything like that. So you want to just talk about like what was your first reaction when you really saw that logo?
I mean, I instantly fell in love with it, and I fell more in love with it when I actually realized it was the Brooklyn Bridge. Because a lot of people look at it and they think like, oh, it's just a basketball hoop with a ball going through it. But then when you pay attention to the structure of it, you actually see the Brooklyn Bridge in it. And so I thought it represented us well. I thought it was perfectly executed. So I loved it off top.
And then I got to ask you too about draft night. Obviously, like I mentioned before, that was the first time I met you guys and the whole team with you. And back then it was like Shockey. There was a couple other guys as well. Yeah. We all did interviews together. But what was it like kind of having it inside the Barclays Center, right? And kind of having it in your home area, really, just representing Brooklyn on the NBA 2K's biggest stage. Because at that time, that draft really got a lot of media attention. I attended, and I could really sense that something special was being planted, right? It wasn't like the seed. It was mostly the seed in the soil was being planted for something special. So I just want to jog your memory a little bit and talk about that first draft night.
I mean, I just got chills even you asking me about it, because here I am sitting here doing this podcast interview in the Barclays. So it's like it was surreal. Like, I mean, I went season 1. it was at the Madison Square, and I believe it was PlayStation Theater, season 1, and then I got to watch it from the back. We was behind the scenes. It wasn't full access or anything like that. So moving forward to the Barclays, were a place where I'm employed, and it was like you say, my home turf, and I thought everything was great. The setup was great. The production was great. The media blitz was like out of this world to me. I mean, it was so much going on that it was kind of like everything that you dream of when you look at yourself being a figure, and you watch it on TV when you see the red carpets and different things like that. But to actually be there and people, they want to hear what you have to say, and then snapping pictures and everything like that. It was almost like a dream come true. Like BSC Global, and that obviously owns and operates an SGC. A lot of the supporting staff was here. I mean, they were in a war room with us, and PR. Shout out to Rachel and Stuart Bryant, who was here at that time, who's no longer here anymore. But they were great in making sure that we was prepared for interviews and receiving interviews and different things of that nature. I mean, I literally could go on and on because I felt like a big kid in a movie. I mean, because that's literally what it was. I thought we had a great draft night. All the players were here except for one. We laughed and talked to each other, and it transferred over into the season. I will say this, and I'm sure we'll get into different things later on, but the team from last year, it was a close-knit group. We did a lot of things together, so we laughed together. You know, we were mad and upset together. I mean, but overall, the personalities was great, and we enjoyed our moments. And that it started from that night, and it's something I'll never forget.
Most definitely, most definitely. Then what about this year's draft? Obviously, it was a little different since not the inaugural.
Oh, sounds like cut out. So it's referring to not the inaugural season. So how did it compare since it was run slightly different than last year's?
Well, the thing about it was, you know, I had literally had to draft from the Barclays Center because the venue didn't allow us that. It was, I guess, for, you know, the room, the space of it didn't have access to have war rooms or different things like that. Now, I know a lot of other people made different arrangements to actually, you know, be on site and different things like that. But I drafted from our training facility at the Barclays. It was myself, Anthony Iglesias, who works for Brooklyn Nets videography staffs, um, Joshua Prush, who's the senior vice president of global partnerships and marketing for BSC, and his son Gavin, who was I want to give him some credit because he assisted me with everything I needed, you know, and writing the names down and the draft board and different things like that. So I had a great time with him. He's one of our biggest fans. So just, you know, shout out to Gavin. But after we made our last pick, I basically hopped in an Uber and went over to the site and met with the guys that we drafted. You know, we drafted three players. Basically, you know, one. Well, we actually. I'm sorry. We drafted three players that night, but one of them wasn't in attendance. So, Chalk, who we drafted at 9, and Potts and Randoms, who we drafted at 31 and 50. They were, you know, Potts was in attendance, Chalk was in attendance, but Randoms, he was in North Carolina. So I got to meet with the players that we drafted that were physically here. But other than that, basically, that, you know, that was the difference. I'd have liked to have been there and see the whole thing and witness closely, but it just didn't happen that way, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then one thing I wanted to ask, because there will be a compare and contrast, is so take us through the first Nets Gaming Crew practice from the first year and this year. So kind of the emotions, the mindset, and all those kind of things.
Okay, now one of the biggest difference is the first season, our practice facility wasn't ready in the beginning of the preseason. So basically, we would practice at the 2K League studio upstairs. And so we literally we were staying in the financial district at last year. And we would get on the train, go over to Long Island City, and we practiced there for the first 2 weeks. So that was, you know, it wasn't, it wasn't actually a strain, but it's a lot easier of us hopping on one train, 10, 15-minute ride, get off right in front of the Barclays and go into practice. So our first 2 weeks, you know, traveling all the way to Long Island City, you know, no train drops you off directly in Long Island City. So you get off and you have to walk. We could only practice in there for certain time periods. So it was just, we was battling a lot. And the funny thing about it, that seems like that's becoming the theme in the beginning of my seasons in the first 2 years. But going into season 2, our practice facility was already together. It was ready, good to go. We jumped right into it. I think we found our groove quicker because everything was already together. So, unfortunately, when COVID-19, came on the scene, that kind of put a halt into everything that was going on.
Yeah,
As far as us practicing and different things like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I've seen the pictures. So talk to us about the emotions when you and the players first arrived in the gaming room, the war zone, the, To me, that's a gaming castle. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's always that initial shot. Um, a lot of the guys who come in as rookies, they haven't seen it. That's the one thing. Most of the time, you only have access to even see any facility unless you're a part of the team. I mean, it's because they're not just open access. So when they go in there, I mean, they got to see it's spacious. We have couches, chairs, ping pong table. We actually have 5 big screen TVs on the wall. 4 of them, which is they can, they have all access to watch whatever, cable, anything like that. I have a TV actually in back of me if I want all them to sit around me at the desk while we watch film and go over different things or whatever. Because my actual computer from my desk is connected to 2 TVs in the facility that allow us to watch film and different things like that. But for refrigerators, stoves, microwaves, closet space. I thought it was designed really well. We actually was in the process of doing some cosmetics, before everything took place to just spruce it up a little bit. But it's definitely a nice atmosphere, and the guys love it.
I
And
love it too,
actually,
man.
yeah,
Oh my god,
the main
I
attraction is
like
like to actually work at the Barclays Center every day.
that's amazing. I probably would bring a cot with
amazing.
me or something. I couldn't leave a place like that.
Yeah, they fall in love with it. I mean, I know last season, and I'm sure it would probably happen again this season if things were a little different. But they used to watch Game of Thrones together every Sunday. That we also during the playoffs, we would be here all night
That's
watching
amazing.
games and having fun, talking trash to each other, ordering pizzas and different things like that. Just different moments to bond in there, other than just actually just playing the game all the time.
That's amazing. I love that so much.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And then Ivan, I got to ask you too. Trying to just switch gears a little bit on the social media side. The social media team's impact with NetsGC. Can you just talk about like social media, NetsGC, and how everything's kind of going from there?
Well, definitely, YO and Cooney. I can't say enough about him. He's the social manager for NetsGC, social media manager, and he's the assistant general manager. He's definitely my right hand guy. A lot of times he's the main guy. I think that's the one thing that we just work well together, and doing a lot of different things. But on the social media side of it, YL has a great approach to it. He's not only our social media manager and assistant GM, but he works on the actual Brooklyn Nets side of it. So he gets to learn a lot of different things that he can take away from the actual NBA side of it and bring it over and blend in with our gaming team as well. So I think our engagement has been well. Of course, we're a year behind most teams as far as being in the 2K league, but we've definitely made our presence felt through his creative mindset and knowing how our community works. Both of us play a instrumental part in that because 2K is where we come from. YL has been in the 2K community for a while as a player mainly, but definitely he has made his presence felt as a social media manager and assistant GM for NetsGC.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to have him, and I appreciate everything that he does.
Yeah, no, you guys definitely do a good job of representing your team, your players, and communicating with the fans. So I love to see it.
And then Ivan, I want to get your comments too on the latest partner, your latest sponsor with NetsGC. First off, congratulations to you guys for partnering with Zenny.
Appreciate it.
So I want to just get your kind of thoughts on that, because obviously when I first heard about the news through Rachel and stuff, I was like, oh wow, this is actually a sponsorship and a partnership that really correlates with what the industry is. Obviously, eyewear with Zenny and you guys playing in front of the screens, being gamers and stuff. So I want to kind of just get your opinion on the sponsorship, how it fits, kind of your overall thoughts on it.
I think it's great. I mean, the thing about it, I know a lot of people make the cliche responses and different things like that, but me, I I love the sponsorship for the fact that I wear glasses. so
I wear
it
contacts, so same here.
so it made sense, and when I spoke to everybody at Zenny, that was one of the correlations that they made with the partnership is that I wear glasses. I'm constantly in front of people, and like it's that brand specifically specializes in protective eyewear that's beneficial to not only myself but gamers as well. And then the other aspect of it is that they have stylish glasses. Like you don't. They have a ton of selection that you can choose from, where you can not only be protecting your eyes, but you can look good as well. So I thought it was a great blend. I mean, of course, you can choose to wear them just for when you're gaming, but then you can also just wear them in general. They're not. It's a nice brand. Like I said, it's numerous of selections. All the people have been very supportive and cooperative. They actually our jersey patches and everything look brilliant. It's a nice look. They go with the new uniforms that we do have this season. So I think it's a great partnership. We're off to a good start. We got a lot of good things coming. Definitely, their interest in the podcast was definitely was big for not only myself but for the organization as well. So I'm just looking forward to a lot of things that we got coming up that hopefully a lot of people like.
That's great, man. That's great. Congrats once again. And then
Appreciate it.
to kind of transition to kind of this season. So you guys are kicking off the season so far. What advice have you given the guys since the season has started?
Well, the thing about my style of coaching is that I've known a lot of these players for a long period of time. Some of them shorter, of course, but um, I, it's a players' league. Um, they look for guidance and some advice here and there, but it's up to the players have to make plays. And me personally, and this approach that we had to season 2 is we wanted to get game changers. Like we wanted to get players that were great at the game, but also high energy personalities, and just just a different vibe of what we experienced last year. So starting that off, of course we retained shuttles and protected at the current time we protected Nate as well, who we eventually end up trading for a 16th overall pick, which is we used that to acquire Rando at the time, and then we kept Wavy. So those were the 3 players that were on our roster. Um, and then going into the draft, we were looking to get a lockdown defender, a PG, and a power forward. And so basically, Chalk, he was everything I like. I mean, he wears his feelings on his sleeve, which I think a lot of times he's misjudged. He's passionate about what he does. He plays at a high level. Very smart player, high IQ, 2K. Definitely, if people got to see his leadership and what type of teammate he is day in and day out, they would truly change their perspective about him. And the reason why I head into that like that is because I rely on player leadership uh, just as much as I do myself. I let them know it's their team, and a lot of the responsibility of how we're going to achieve the success that we're looking for, it lies in them holding each other accountable and being responsible as not only players but representatives for the next GC and the NBA 2K League. So, with that being said, I'm pretty pleased with the guys dealing with everything that we've dealt with so far. Unfortunately, the Rando situation didn't work out the way that we had planned for it, but we acquired chess Corey Taylor from Detroit, Michigan. He's been a very great pickup for us, and I think we're gonna do some really good things. We played our first game last week against Mavs GG. Under some different circumstances. I'm not one who makes excuses or complains at all, but I thought we fought and played well, considering everything that we had to go through for the last couple of weeks.
That's good, man. And that transitions right into kind of the next cue. But before I start that, number one, just you talking about your coaching style. That, in my opinion, that's what makes a perfect coach, or at least a very good coach, especially with that communication and that trust that you have in players that you really emphasize in that response. So I just wanted to say that first. But to get into my next question, so I was going to bring up the addition of Chess and what he's brought to the team. So could you just talk a little about that, how he's adjusted so far? Obviously, like you said, things didn't plan out the way it was supposed to. But how's he been on the team? How has his impact been thus far?
The thing I like about him the most, if you haven't seen Chess, I mean he's a big guy, and but he's soft spoken, loves to laugh, wants to play well, and the thing that I really like about him the most is he's open minded to doing what's best for the team. And a lot of times you find players in general, but especially in his situation, coming in and, not always adhering to what the team wants over what they may have been successful at prior to. So I think just his ability to adapt and be open-minded and willing has helped make us a better team. I'm watching us grow every practice game, and it's been something beautiful to see. I mean, that's often what you deal with in managing in general in coaching is that trying to blend personalities and working out. Unfortunately for us, we get 6 months. We got 6 months to try to iron it out. Now, not the entire 6 months, because you got to actually grow each and every week and each and every month in order to achieve what the ultimate goal is for most people is to be competitive, make playoffs, win and compete heavy in the mid-season tournaments, but ultimately put yourself in position to win a championship. So I've watched them grow and learn each other and talk to each other and get to know each other. So it's been great.
That's really good, man. That's good.
So I want to ask a little bit more about you again. So when did you start hosting the OG 2 Cents podcast, and what was your inspiration behind launching it? And then what's your 2 cents for our listeners today?
Okay, the OG 2 Cents is funny. It dates all the way back until 2018. Basically, it was the first season of the finals. Season 1 finals. I was in New York after the Knicks had defeated Heat Check Game, and me, Jelani Mitchell, who's the coach for Jazz Gaming now, but at the time he wasn't in the 2K League. Nick Gartrell, who's the assistant coach for T-Wolves Gaming, and Black Frank White, who's the NBA 2K League ambassador, community ambassador. We all went to the rooftop of Hotel Z. It'll be a night I'll never forget. And none of us were in the league at this time. Like none of it. None of us had a position in the league. We was just sitting up talking on the rooftop about different dreams and aspirations of possibly being in the league and what we wanted to do, what we were going to do, and different things like that. But Jelani, who's known as Comp, 2K Comp Games, him and Black Frank White had a show called First Shake. They were already heavy into creating content and being social and different things like that. Myself at the time, I wasn't social on that much. I had a good following, but I really wasn't doing anything on social media to create the following. It was just more or less because I ran the league. But it was at that moment, 2K Comcast, he said, Kurt, you need to be more visual with the community. Like, people like you, people respect you, but they need to hear from you more often than what they do. So I said, okay. I said, I'll try to be more active and come up with something. So probably like a week later, I was on Twitter. I put out a tweet, and at the end, I don't even know what made me do it. Like I still like I think about it all the time. I don't know. I just hashtagged the OG 2 cents. It was just my thoughts, and I hit tweet. I pretty much left the tweet alone because I wasn't on social media that much. So the next day I looked and I'm sure as a lot of people do that you gauge your likes and your retweets and comments and different things like that. And people loved it. And from that point forward, I said, well, Kurt, that's it. Like that's what we're going to do. And so it basically went from a hashtag to I got a graphic made with a coin on it, and I evolved from that to an actual video of the coin actually spinning. And I just built on it, and I just said I use my platform to promote positivity, motivation, and inspiration.
That's awesome. I really love that.
That's awesome, man.
And then what would be your 2 cents today for our listeners?
Basically, I'm just going to piggyback off of what I put out today. Synergy is, recognizing those who organically support you, and being able to know who's in your corner and who's not in your corner, and be open and willing to accept those who are. I think a lot of great things have came from it was supposed to happen. You just doing the right thing, and creating opportunities for yourself and people around you. And I think that's most of the time that's when greatness happens. So just recognizing that synergy and welcoming it into your life.
Definitely appreciate those good vibes. Thank you.
Definitely, and I can't. That's straight facts. I don't know how else to put it. That's completely on target. I got to give it to you. That's a fat retweet from me on my end.
I appreciate it. Because I even feel like that with Chris. Like, we have great talks, great interviews. And I just appreciate good people, and that's something I try to replicate myself on a daily basis. It's not always the easiest thing, but that's that has worked for me, and I'm not going to do anything to change it.
I really appreciate that, man. I really appreciate those comments. And then my next cue, let's ask a kind of a fun question. So if you were in charge of creating the next NBA 2K, who would be the cover athlete? We'll start with that first.
I'm gonna be a little biased. I probably want KD on the cover.
There we go. There we go. And then what features and game modes would you add or even subtract if you were in that same position?
I wouldn't subtract any. I'm like what we were talking about earlier. I love 2K. Even with its imperfections, I'm still in love with the game, and I think I'll always be in love with the game. I think they can. I think we just need to make consistent upgrades to the game more often. People play it a lot when it first comes out. We spend a lot of time and money on microtransactions and different things like that. So just a little bit of more bang for your buck, so to speak, and constant upgrades and what's relevant to our communities, especially in the pro-am community.
And then do you think NBA 2K will ever become the next large game to add crossplay?
It has to. It has to. I mean, it's a competitive game. It's a sim game from a competitive platform. Obviously, we always have these endless debates about what's the best console and different things like that. It definitely would solve a lot for us on our end. I mean, I'm hopeful about it because it's something definitely I want to see. And I think with the way everything's happened in my life and what I've witnessed is I'll never say nothing will never happen because here I am sitting at the Barclays, a guest on the Wingspan podcast, and that's something I didn't see 5, 6 years ago.
Well,
Most definitely.
I'm glad we're here to see it. I mean,
Yeah, I'm glad.
real
This has been a fun
talk.
one.
Definitely.
Yeah. So right before I hit my last question, do you think if the 2K went with that, because a lot of people would be, unfair console advantage kind of question, do you think they would start with a specific game mode?
You definitely. I mean, I personally think the biggest game mode in 2K is Park. I think it resonates to the kids. Um, I just think that's one of the biggest game modes, and then Park kind of transfers into the stage mode and different things of that nature. So um, definitely, if ideally, I would probably say we'll start with 1v1, and then they would build off of that. Whether that goes into my team, my league, different things like that. But definitely, I think it would start out with 1v1. But the biggest mode to me, I think when I think of 2K, is Park, because kids from 6, 7 years old, they're fascinated with the actual Park mode of the game, even if it's just blacktop.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, so taking us home with the last question. Now, looking forward to the future, what do you think is next for esports as a whole?
Well, I mean, obviously we've had our big splash with being on ESPN2, and I'm sure we're gaining a lot of extended exposure for that. It's a lane that hadn't been possible before COVID-19. So I think esports has emerged during this time with everybody being at home, quarantining and isolating and different things of that nature. There's a lot of people who are aware of not only our sport but other esports games as well, because um, we've been a source of entertainment that we're lacking. There's no actually physical basketball going on right now. So for those who are hoop junkies and really love the game of basketball, now you get a chance to see it, but just a different form of it. And if a lot of people are like myself, when I peak interest in something, I get all the way into it and I get detailed with it. And I think a lot of people are going to do that with the NBA 2K League, and as we continue to grow, and I think we've upgraded every year, and I think it's only going to get bigger and better. And I think we use this moment to just keep promoting our esports and watching it flourish, as well as a lot of other esports are flourishing during this time. It's connecting a lot of different relationships from different corporations and different companies who now, with us being active, it makes it a noticeable integration to be able to get their product and brand out there.
Most definitely. And esports is definitely on the rise. And we'll kind of just conclude with that. Esports is one of those things that are going to be on the rise. It's kind of the future. It's coming and it's coming fast. And what you guys are doing over at Nets GC, I think it's beautiful for the community of Brooklyn alone, outside the sports atmosphere and the esports atmosphere. You guys are really building something special over there.
Oh, I truly appreciate it, and thanks for the support. And hopefully, we put on for Brooklyn this week. We play 4 games this week, so definitely they're excited about it. I'm excited, and I hope everyone who supports us is excited as well.
Yeah,
And then
BK all day.
for the BK all day, and then for the listeners listening at home, where could they find or watch the Nets GC games?
First and foremost, you can follow NetsGC on social media at Nets Gaming Crew. You can check us out on twitch.tv/NBA 2K League, and also youtube.com/NBA 2K League. ESPN has been picking up different days during the week, so that's definitely something to look out for. Because last Friday, our first actual game, we were on ESPN2. But just check out our social media and you can stay informed.
And there you go, guys. Well, Ivan, thanks a lot, man. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to join Doug and I.
I appreciate it. Anytime.
Yeah, no,
Of
we really
course.
appreciate the stories. We appreciate the 2 cents, the passion that you have for the game, for your teammates, for your mentors. It's just a great story, man. So, Chris, just take us home.
You got it, guys. And feel free to remember to email over any suggestions, questions, comments, or thoughts on any of our content to wingspanpodcast@gmail.com. And do not forget to follow us on our social media accounts. But most importantly, make sure you guys subscribe to our podcast on your preferred listening service. And as for next time, stay classy, take care, and stay safe, everyone.